Ladies and gentlemen,
representing the African Democratic Party, Mr. Babafemi Adamasi.
representing All Progressive Congress, APC, Mr. Babajide
Mr. Jimmy Agbaje. And finally, last but certainly not the least, representing the Alliance for Democracy, AD, Mr. Owolabi Salis. Please give him a round of applause. Gentlemen, you are welcome to the platform and to the debate. Well, a few minutes ago, back in the green room, each of the candidates participated in a draw of the ballot to determine the order in which they would field opening and closing questions. They will therefore answer their opening and closing questions in the order of the ballot results, which I'll come to in a few moments. Before we begin, let me provide a brief summary of the ground rules which each of the candidates are already familiar with and which they have committed to. The candidates will adhere to a time limit of 90 seconds per question. With 30 seconds to go, the timekeeper will provide an audible bell ring indicating that there is only 30 seconds left on the clock. It will be followed 30 seconds later by 2 rings indicating that the candidate's time is up. There will be no additional time approved. Each candidate will have an opportunity to respond to a number of general questions, which I, as the moderator, will ask. They will also field specific questions from a panel of subject experts on a number of critical issues facing Lagos State. Before we proceed, I'd like you to join me in welcoming our expert panelists. Right on my left, to my left rather, is Mr. Israel Aye. Please give him a warm round of applause. And to his left is Ndidi Onwuneli. And next to her is Yemi Adamolekun. Taking up the rear, but certainly not the last, is Mr. Yemi Oshinaike. At appropriate times during the debate, candidates may have 1 minute for rebuttals. These we expect will be few and far between because of the limitations of time. During the debate, I'd like to let you gentlemen know that we do have in the Situation Room a fact-checking team of independent analysts who will be looking at the data, the information, and the claims that you are providing, particularly for the purposes of this debate and in the post-debate event, if necessary. The debate will last approximately 2 hours, following which your spokespersons, again, will participate in a post-debate panel to clarify or hopefully enhance your positions. At this point, I want to wish each one of you all the very best over the next 2 hours. Thank you. This evening, we begin the 2019 Lagos gubernatorial election debate with identical questions for each of the candidates. As mentioned earlier, you will be responding in the order of the ballot that was conducted just a few minutes ago, which means that Mr. Owolabi Salis will respond first and then be followed in that order by Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, then Mr. Babatunde Gbadamosi, and finally, Mr. Jimmy Agbaje. So, on that note, Mr. Owolabi Salis, it's been said that past performance and past accomplishments are very good predictors of future performance. What is it that you've accomplished prior to now that proves beyond a shadow of doubt that you are ready, able, and competent enough to become the governor of Lagos State, Africa's 7th largest economy?
Thank you. One very important thing is if you're seeking to be a governor of a state, to serve in a public institution like Lagos State, I just believe that your interest should be to serve the people of Lagos State. Your loyalty is to be to the people of the state. And we have had a situation so far in Nigeria, particularly in Lagos State, where loyalty of the people on board is changing from the loyalty to the people to loyalty to individuals. So one of the reasons I'm contesting this position is that I want to, show the people of Lagos State that it's time to shift their loyalty from, to an individual to the people of Lagos State. If it happens you happen to be the governor of Lagos State, for example, the key thing is that you go there first to, serve the people, number one. Number two, you go there with the fear of God. And the context is this, the government, when they become, if you're a governor, your interest is to look into the welfare of the less privileged, particularly in the society. And that's why in government you task the rich to support the poor. So my interest deeply is that I want to take Lagos Commonwealth from an individual and give it to the people of Lagos State. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salis. And over to you, Mr. Sanwo-Olu.
Thank you very much. My name is Jide Sanwo-Olu. To be the governor of Lagos State, I've had a unique opportunity in the last 30 years to come up with a pedigree of having served 3 governors, had public sector experience for 13 years, and have had private sector experience for 17 years. I've been an investment banker. I've run the treasury of 3 financial institutions. I've been head of corporate banking. I've been head of commercial and treasury. I've run the balance sheet at the very highest level of 3 financial institutions. Before then, I've also worked as a seismic data acquisition surveyor in the Niger Delta. Coming home on the private sector, I have been a 3-time commissioner, having served 3 different governors. Had been at some time the acting commissioner for economic planning and budget, which meant that I oversee the budget of Lagos State twice. I'd been the commissioner for commerce and industry, which means I had the opportunity to set up the Lekki Free Trade Zone. I have been the commissioner for establishment, training, and pension, which meant I oversee over 135,000 civil service that had the responsibility of Lagos State. I have been a pedigree with the University of Lagos, where I did my first degree. I'm an alumni of the Lagos Business School, the London Business School, and the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Thank you so very much.
Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Babajide Gbadamosi.
Very much like Alhaji Lateef Jakonde, that oft-quoted former governor of Lagos State, I'm coming in from the cold. I've never been in government, never been a banker, and never handled public finances at all. However, I'm coming in from the private sector. I've built an estate pretty much in the model of what I plan to build in Lagos State. Provided infrastructure, provided power for the last 8 years non-stop, provided water for the last 8 years non-stop, built a network of roads and drains, and somehow, despite being in the Lekki Peninsula area, avoided being flooded out. So scenes of kayaks, careening down the highway are absent in Amen Estate. Also, in addition to that, because I'm a private sector person, the whole idea of fealty, of prudence in the running of public sector finances has already been schooled into me, because I've had to build what I've built without recourse to exposure to the financial sector in Nigeria. I'll just stop at that for now.
Thank you, Mr. Gbadamosi. And last but certainly not the least, Mr. Jimmy Agbaje, over to you.
Thank you very much. Well, I am an indigenous Lagosian, so I am very passionate about Lagos. I am a pharmacist. I was trained in this country. I believe that this country can bring up people that can match anyone in the world if the environment is right. So I believe in pushing that we can do things right in our country. I am, of course, like I said, a pharmacist. I set up my practice at the age of 27. So I'm one of those that believe that the young ones can start early, and therefore we have to put the right environment across to them for them to do that. I have served my profession meritoriously. I have been so honored. I believe that even on the political front, I have encouraged a lot of younger ones to show more interest in politics. I come from the background that as far as our country is concerned, as far as Lagos in particular is concerned, that we need to address the issues of a megacity differently. This is my third time running. In the first time, I talked about new thinking, new Lagos. The second time, I talked about bold ideas, new opportunities. And this time, we're talking about re-anchoring Lagos. All saying that you need fresh ideas, you need a fresh perspective. It's not about the same thing giving you incremental development. We need to do it differently so that we can address the issues of the megacity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Agbaje. I'm sure that millions of voters in Lagos will agree with you that definitely we need new ideas moving forward, which we hope we will be hearing from each one of you during the course of this debate today. Our debate is going to consist of various rounds. We have approximately 8 or 9 rounds of questions. Each round contains 2 questions each, and we will go from the left to the right and the other way back during the course of this debate. So the second question in round 1, we will start from my right and work our way all the way down to the left, is this: in less than 50 days, one of you will be elected governor of Lagos, Lagos State, a dynamic, fast-paced, innovative, creative economic capital with a population of approximately 23 million people. Given the enormity and the complexity of the challenges and problems that Lagos State faces, in your first 100 days, what would you consider to be the 3 immediate top priorities and challenges that Lagos State faces and which your administration will resolve to fix? Mr. Gbadamosi, starting off with you.
The first thing I'm going to be looking at very, very quickly is public sector pay. What we pay our civil servants and what we demand from them, there is a massive gulf between this, and we need to bring them back together. Our civil servants are very disgracefully paid, and we want them to deliver a 21st century service to us in Lagos State. That's not going to happen at the sort of pay levels that we're offering them right now. So we're going to upgrade civil service pay very quickly. Secondly, we're going to be looking at traffic simultaneously at the same time. We're going to be looking at this traffic situation because we're spending too many man-hours in traffic. An average of 6 hours every day, every Lagosian spends going from home to work and from work to home. That's got to stop. We're going to introduce high-volume, high-speed passenger ferries that will also have roll-on, roll-off facilities all across Lagos. And thirdly, we'll be looking at power, because without power, we can do nothing. When God wanted to create the earth, he started with light. Let there be light. And light was, and then everything else came, after. So we're going to put light in a minimum of 8 local governments within 18 months as part of our Lagos Integrated Regeneration Plan, an emergency plan that we put together that will serve this administration going forward. Thank you.
Mr. Sanwo-Olu.
Thank you very much. In first 100 days, I will tackle the traffic problem of Lagos frontally. I will need to bring about easy solutions. Out of the 62 traffic gridlocks that you have identified, some are low-hanging that we can resolve within the first 60 days. Some are short to medium to long term. So within the first 60 days is to solve the ones that were low-hanging, about 20 or 22 of them. Within the first 100 days, like I said, I will tackle the gridlock in Apapa. I will need to clear up all the traffic, and all the trailers on top of Apapa. I will make sure that it's a nightmare and will not see that again. Within that same time, I will ensure that we engage the private sector. We have an international discourse where all of the stakeholders on the private sector, ensuring that the Lagos 21st century kicks off awareness, have an international discourse where we can set agenda for the next 4 years for us. Within that same space, I will bring about a town hall meeting to tell the public service that we have new ways that we will be engaging ourselves. Let us sit down and find out what are our issues. We are going to be making promises to Lagosians. Within that time frame, all of the issues that concern the public service, we will resolve it. Those 4 things we will critically resolve. And finally, I'll have the cabinet running within that first time.
Mr. Agbaje.
Yes. I think first and foremost, as governor, is to let Lagos know that there's a new sheriff in town. And that means that it's going to be different leadership. That we're going to bring character to leadership. That is going to be leadership for the people and not for self. And that's something that's going to be important. And that means that you're going to carry everybody along to bring about best practices. And then we're looking at traffic. Again, we must address traffic. That is very, very important at this point in time. Traffic in terms of the immediate, of looking at our potholes that create so much unnecessary traffic. Looking even at our traffic lights. Our traffic lights are working on the old system of every 1 minute, every 30 seconds. We must begin to bring technology even to traffic lights, where they're using radar to know in which way traffic is heavy and not, and is able to adjust accordingly. We're going to have to strengthen to get LASMA to work and work efficiently. Of course, waste becomes an issue. Again, we're talking of waste in terms of the 3 R's, in terms of recovery, in terms of recycling and reusing. Recover is the aspect where we have to get waste from the point of use right down to the to disposal. And of course, lastly, will be power. We have to begin to have power in Lagos in a way that Lagosians will not have a problem with power.
Thank you, Mr. Agbaje. Mr. Salis, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. We have a big problem to solve. This President administration has created. Most importantly, my first 1 week, I want to set up a ward executive council in every ward. We're going to appoint some special assistants into every ward, at least 50, because those special assistants are going to be carrying out some duties of the governor. More importantly, I discovered in Lagos there's been a lot of violent brigades in every nooks and crannies. in Lagos State. I want to clear all the violent brigades in Lagos State, and I know I'm going to do it. Fortunately, the first time I didn't mention my qualification because of time. We all know about traffic. It can be very intimidating. So we all look at the traffic situation, fine, we're going to look into it. But more importantly is this youth. I want to invest heavily on them, get them jobs. We want to do wealth creation at the grassroots. Very, very important, and everybody in Lagos State is crying about it. But key thing, number one, that is militating against the development of this state is the issue of our commonwealth that is in the hand of an individual. And I'm very determined to take this commonwealth and give it to the people of Lagos State. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Salis.
Thank you.
During the course of this debate today, you will have an opportunity to unpack some of these ideas and more that you've talked about, and we're looking forward to hearing practically how some of these aspirations and visions will become a reality. At this point, I'm going to hand over to two members of our expert panel at this point to ask the next set of questions on education and health. So I hand over at this point to Ndidi Onwuneli and Yemi Oshinaike.
Good evening, gentlemen. Today, Lagos faces immense challenges.
We can't hear you. Excuse me. Sorry.
Can't hear me?
I can't actually hear you.
Good evening.
Can't actually hear you at all.
Good
Thank you.
evening.
Okay, what we will do at this point, we'll come back to the panelists while the production team tries to get a microphone in their hands, but I'm going to move on and ask my next question, and we'll come back to the panel in just a moment, just for the reasons of time. Now, a number of you did speak about gridlock. You talked about traffic. I grew up in Lagos in the 1960s, at a time when the population was approximately 1.5 million people. And as the son of a civil servant who worked for the Nigerian Ports Authority, I witnessed firsthand the inefficiency of port operations, the gridlock on our streets, the difficulty in accessing routes, linking different roads to the ports, and the environmental degradation that is caused by all of this. 50 years later, it's still unresolved. Needless to say, the impact on residents and businesses over the decades has been catastrophic. It's been said that in non-oil export earnings, the impact of this is approximately $10 billion, and in terms of corporate earnings annually, a loss of approximately $2.5 trillion. I want to ask this question. How will your government, if given the opportunity, solve and address these very serious issues at a state and a federal level? And I'm going to start at this point with Mr. Salis, and we'll walk our way.
All right, thank you. First of all, I want to make a reference. Your question seems to be echoing, and I just try to pick that you want me to speak on the issue of traffic situation and how to address it. Am I right, sir?
Did you say that my voice was echoing?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to say to the production team, we need some fallback here so that the candidates can hear clearly what is being said from this table. Is this any better for you?
Yeah,
Much
please.
better.
All right. Do you want me to repeat my question?
Yeah, please.
I talked about growing up in Lagos in the 1960s, at a time when we had 1.5 million people living in this city.
Yes.
And I was very familiar, as a son of a civil servant who worked with the Nigerian Ports Authority, with the problems of gridlock, the problems in our ports, and the environmental degradation that has taken place on account of many of these problems. Not to talk of the impact, the financial impact that this has had on our economy. In terms of non-oil exports, it's estimated that Lagos State loses approximately $10 billion a year and approximately $2.5 trillion in lost corporate earnings. If you become governor of Lagos State tomorrow, practically, on a state and a federal level, how do you intend to resolve these problems?
Okay, thank you. One major way to address traffic problem in a major city is subway system or the train system. We have the tube system in London. We have it in, we call it subway in New York. I happen to be an attorney from the state of New York. We have it in all mega cities. Lagos is the image of African black people in the world. The past government, or the present government, I'm sorry, needs to open the book when it comes to the train system that has been there for more than 15 years, uncompleted. We need a train system to reduce the situation of traffic in Lagos. And of course, my colleague here did mention of potholes. There are a lot of bad roads, and these bad roads are results of imposition. When someone imposes people at the grassroots level of Lagos State, the loyalty of those who are imposed there changes from the loyalty to the people to the loyalty to the individual, particularly if that person that imposed them there retains the right to remove them. And that is why all the neighborhoods in Lagos today are not something to write home about. Thank you.
Well, I had mentioned some of the short-term ways of addressing traffic, so I won't go back to that. But I think what I'll add is that you need to get the local governments working again. Because if you want to address potholes, then you have to have a local government. It's not from Ikeja that you determine where potholes are in the suburbs of Lagos State. And that's very important. But going to mid and long term, the way it works is that you've got to plan ahead. I'll give a good example. We have a refinery coming up on the Lekki axis, and there's no provision yet for what is going to happen to lift products from there. So if we're not careful, we're going to have another gridlock like we have in Apapa. Now, it's also important that we understand that urban planning, town planning, does have an effect. Now, the idea is to have even development across Lagos State, so that you're having less of movement from one end of Lagos to the other. And a very good way to address this is, you find that when our children are on holidays, there's less traffic because there's less movement about. And it's in that way that you have to look at the different parts of Lagos and make them self-containing, self-serving, so that you don't need to do that. And naturally, Lagos is still one of the 2 mega cities in this world that does not have a transport system, a rail system that is working. That is no longer acceptable. We must get that going. Then we must go into the idea of multi-layered roads, because there's little to what you can do to expand our roads. Let's begin to have multi-tiered roads.
Thank you very much. I think the solution is what we'll call an intermodal transportation system that takes care of the waterways, that takes care of the rail, and takes care of the roads. Good enough for the rail, it's work in progress. There's a blue line that is coming up. There's a red line whose alignment too, in conjunction with the federal government, has finally been agreed. So I'm expecting that within the next 2 years, at least we'll have rail tracks on the blue line, which is from Okokomaiko to Marina, 28 kilometers. And we'll have another red line from Ebutemeta to Agege, which is another 36 or 37 kilometers. Combining that is to do the waterways. We've got 5 jetties, terminals that we've built now. If we can do 2 more and have us bring about higher capacity ferries, not the type we have now that are doing only 20, 22 passengers. If we can bring in ferries that can do 50 to 100 at once and talk to the ferry services on both directional traffic, we will do that. The third one will be the BRT, which was started, right? And try and increase capacity. Try and see if we can bring about a CKD plant where vehicles, those kind of articulated buses will be produced here. So by the time you combine the 3, the rail working well, the waterways working well, and the roads, giving them dedicated lines working well, we will solve the problem.
There are a number of ways to tackle this problem. The most obvious one is rail. Secondly, barges. Barges to lift containers from the actual wharfs and take them to lighter terminals all around Lagos. Take them to lighter terminals all around Lagos. And then, thirdly, devolution. Devolution of powers. It's time we started this discussion about restructuring Nigeria. And the port, being in Lagos, and us losing that much revenue, is unconscionable. I'm not having it. So first thing we're going to do is copy the Ethiopians and build a heavy rail line, the length of Lagos State, from Badagry all the way to Odeomi, with branches going off to every exit point by road of Lagos. And the point with this is that all of these exit points must have container terminals where the trains will pass through Apapa and Ibafo and deposit their goods at those container terminals so that people coming from out of state, which is quite common, will not clog up the roads in Lagos with their trailers. Number two, Apapa is one of the Lagos Integrated Regeneration Plan local governments, 8 of them that we've selected. And we're going to be pouring in the money that Alpha Beta is currently taking into that project to make sure that we regenerate that. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your responses. We are going to take a short commercial break, but when we come back, we'll follow up with the questions from our panelists, which were not answered, which were not asked a few moments ago. And while we're on that break, I want you to pause for a moment and think about this, because it, again, will be one of the questions that we'll be coming back to you on. A lot of promises will be made during this election campaign. But then the reality is that there is a limitation of finances. On the flip side of that is a populace that many times also claims, rightly or wrongly, that they are excessively overtaxed. How do we balance that? I want you to think about that and reflect that in your responses when we come back right after this short commercial break. Thank you very much. Round of applause. Welcome back to the Lagos Governorship election debates, brought to you by The Platform. I now go over to our panel of experts who will be asking 2 questions related to education and health. Over to the panel.
Good evening. Apologies. Good evening, gentlemen. Today, Lagos State faces immense challenges in the education sector. There's insufficient funding for education, poor teacher training and motivation, inadequate vocational and adult literacy support, and the list goes on. As governor, if you had to pick one area of priority and focus on this, from preschool to primary, secondary, vocational, adult education, and tertiary education, which one would you pick? And what specifically would you do during your 4-year tenure to leave a legacy in the education sector? Now, please pick only one sector. I'll start with Mr. Badumusi.
The biggest problem we have right now is the number of children of primary school age that are out of school. You see them in traffic, we turn our eyes away in our air-conditioned cars, and we need to address that as quickly as possible. The problem really has become the usurpation of local government powers in the area of management of primary schools. The Constitution says that the local governments are the ones that are supposed to take care of primary school education, but we have a SUBEB or something like that, that is called, that takes all the funds that are supposed to go to these schools. So we're going to devolve just what we're asking from the federal government, where we ask for devolution of powers, that there should be true federalism and so on. We're going to start practicing exactly what we preach by devolving, the powers back to the local governments, including that to manage primary schools. So we're going to build more schools, just like Alhaji Jakonde did 35 years ago. Okay, we're going to put schools in the communities. The idea of children crossing major roads to get to school, that has to end. The idea of children traveling all the way from Ajah to Obalende to go to school, that has to end. So we're going to build schools in the communities, and we're going to hand them over to the local government authorities, and we're going to we're going to digitize the entire education process, the management process of education, financial and so on, personnel, everything. Put that all on a digital platform so that management will be easy for the local governments. I'll stop at this point.
Thank you very much, Didi. Well, I would still go with the primary school because it's also the bedrock. But essentially what we'll be doing, right, is to look at, as Commissioner for ESTAP, I was training over 1,000 teachers every year, is to look at the capacity development of these teachers. The schools that are turning them out, that is the training institutes, you know, the teachers training schools, what are the curriculums that they are giving out to them? So let's look at the capacity development for these teachers. Then we take it back to the infrastructure that we need to have at this primary school. Are they teaching them civics? Are they teaching them things around even religious studies? Because a whole lot of things are happening around us, and we need to nib it at that stage where they're still very formative. So we need to begin to think through things around creative learning from that place. Coding, we need to think through evolving the curriculum so that it situates to the reality of what the 21st century should be looking at. So beyond training, beyond capacity development of the teachers, is also to look at the infrastructure, building up those schools, right? And very well is to look at what are the additional things post schools that they need going into the secondary schools. So we build the both layout of the financing. We look at how much are we putting on budgetary line on the education, which is about 8.7. Can we wrap it up to about 12, right? And push more effort in the primary school, in teachers, in the teaching colleges that they are coming out from, in the facilities that are in the school, and by extension also evolving the suburb and the curriculum in that level.
Yeah, well, if you say one thing, I'll say technology. And the reason is simple. It's a new world out there. It's a knowledge economy out there. It's about innovation. Our children today in public schools have no exposure to technology. So for me, technology can drive a lot of other things. If you put technology, every school, and when I say every school, every primary school will have internet connection. And it is very important because when you do have internet connection, you must have power. When you have power, you must have teaching. So you're using technology to drive the process of education so that we can have a lot more of the Andelas of this world. We can have the Flutterwares, we can have the paychecks, we can have Iroko, because that is where the future is. That is where they're going to get employed. It is very key. So on one thing, it's technology, and that is my take. And we will start from day one because we believe that that is the way to go. Those that have been there for the last 20 years have put obstacles in the, for technology. In terms of right of way, we've had Google that has wanted to give us free internet for our schools, but they keep putting obstacles for vested interest reasons, and that is something we're going to remove in the first 100 days.
Thank you. A successful government is the government that is able to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor in basic needs of life. We must get the definition right. Education is one of the basic needs. The rich people, they don't have problem educating their children in this country. They even have British schools, American accented schools and all that. The problem is the less privileged people out there. Or, there's so many of them in the markets, so many of them out there have gone around the schools. Up to today, I see children carrying benches on their head to the primary schools. Go to Apapa, you see them sitting on the floor. At Amukoku right there, they are sitting on the floor. People are sitting on, these are children of the less privileged. The attack is on the children of the less privileged, and I'm very angry about it. You see, no, honestly, I'm very, very angry because why is that? The product of imposition lack of fair play in this country, and some people sat down on the Commonwealth, misusing it, using it to enslave these children, enslave their families. It's so painful. We're going to look into it deeply. And again, on the issue of practical education, is actually a challenge. We're going to invest on practical education. I personally developed EduBond, or EduFin system, education finance systems and insurance bases are developed in New York, and I've been working with the federal government on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll come to Mr. Yemi Oshinaki in a few moments, but I just want to say this. As much as it is that we would like to compare our positions with either the current government or another candidate, I think it's very important during the course of this debate for us to talk practically about some of the things that we do intend to achieve. So let's not miss out on this opportunity and give Lagosians an insight into the capabilities that you can all bring to the table. At this point, Mr. Yemi Oshinaki, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening once again, gentlemen. It's been estimated that between 10 to 15 doctors in the employ of Lagos State Health Service Commission leave the service on a monthly basis. I'm a specialist at the government level.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
It's been estimated that 10 to 15 doctors on the average leave the employ of the Lagos State Health Service Commission on a monthly basis. And as a consultant at the federal level, I can give you an estimate that an equal number, if not slightly higher, also leave the federal government establishment in the state. What this has done is to push the state healthcare system to the point where you have an average of one doctor to about 2,500 to 4,000 patients in the state, which clearly for the health indices of the state. If elected governor of the state, do you think there are practical steps that can be taken to reduce this trend? Number two, what will be your health policy regarding specialist training in the state? Starting from Mr. Salas.
Thank you. I'm going to repeat myself. I'm going to repeat the definition of a successful governance. A successful governance is that government that is able to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor in basic needs of life. Health is one of them. And I'm maintaining it today in this country or in this state. Many of the rich people, they don't have problem with this, what you just said. They don't have problem with their health. They buy private doctors, they even fly abroad. The problem you just said is problem that affects the less privileged. And any government that does not focus on the less privileged is not a government. You see, one doctor for 1,000 people, that's a problem. Who is it affecting? Ikeja right there are two sections like I learned, one for the rich people, one for the poor people. I've gone to some hospitals. You see children, patients, they were receiving drips on a seat, on no bed for them, but for the rich people, there are beds. That's just what we have to solve, and we have to address it. When we get there, the first thing I want to do is set up a World Executive Council, take the Commonwealth back to the people. You see, it's the issue of this Commonwealth. Somebody sat down on the Commonwealth and is using it to enslave everybody. You have to speak out for the people. See, what you said is a matter that affects the people. Thank you.
Health in Lagos is not working as it should. Life expectancy for Lagos is about 49 years, below the national average, and we're in the bottom half of 36 states in terms of life expectancy. We must look at our health differently. And I am one for the managed care concept, which is generally known as the health insurance model. And basically what you're doing is to keep the doctors, to keep the pharmacists, to keep the lab scientists and all members of the health team, is to make it work. And the way to work is to say that you're running a scheme that revolves around the general practitioner, that is the GP. Now, you are going to employ the services of the GP. Your citizens are going to determine the choice of their GP. It is your duty as government to write a check, an insurance like a premium, on their behalf and be the regulator. It is not government that will participate, because what the GPs are handling will be primary health care. And don't forget that primary health care is responsible for 70 to 75% of the ailments that we come across in the state. So if you're able to address 75% of those issues at the GP level, running a health insurance model, then you then go on to the specialist aspect of it, where you now know that a lot of the pressure is off the teaching hospitals. What you have today is that people have malaria and they go to LASUT. It should not be so in a system that works.
Thank you very much. So there will be two sides to read. It's also first to attack the issue around the welfare. Where are the doctors? Why are they leaving? So if it's a welfare thing, I had that commissioner for staff before manage the welfare of the doctors. We can look at it and stem that. But going forward is to look at what we need to quickly do with the health insurance policy that has just been signed on. How can we quickly let 1 million to 2 million people sign on to the health insurance policy? What that will do is immediately activate access. Access will begin to enjoy facilities that are state-run and also that are privately run. We've got over 300 primary health institutions. We need to equip and put personnel in those places. When we put the personnel there, then access becomes a lot easier. And when we have access, then the private sector, the private health institutions too, will join the government establishment and they will be able to afford and give them quality health quicker and faster. So it's for government to look at the budgetary provision on the health line. We're currently doing about 9 to 10%. How well can we, over the next 4 years, push it to around 18 to 20? So year-on-year basis, let us increase the budgetary allocation to the health facility. Let's enjoy a real partnership with the private hospitals and ensure that access is affordable, is accessible to all of the citizens. Once we do that, we will have an efficient health system.
I will talk about primary health care and universal health insurance later. The question was about brain drain in the health sector. And when I spoke earlier, my first answer was that I would look at the civil service pay structure, that I would bring it more in line with our current economic realities, and that's what the medical sector falls into. I have 4 key areas that I'm focusing on. Key workers, I call them: healthcare, education, security, and emergency response people. All of these guys are going to get huge pay raises. The minimum pay for a doctor, for a medical doctor, correct me if I'm wrong, sir, the minimum pay for a medical doctor in the United States is about $200,000 per annum. Yes, they have a higher tax rate of about 45%, top rate of tax. But here, if we were to offer our own doctors, freshly graduated, about $50,000 per annum, I think they'd stay. I personally think they stay. And that's where I'm going with that. As far as specialist training is concerned, the pay raise will go across the board and we'll be headhunting Nigerian qualified specialists from across the world to bring them back into the Lagos State Service, because the situation where Luth carries the healthcare burden of Lagos State is frankly disgraceful.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Welcome back to the Lagos Governorship Election Debates, brought to you by the platform here at the Landmark Center in Victoria Island. Before we went to the break, we dealt with quite a number of issues, and a few commitments have been made, a few promises have also been made by the candidates. But I just want to quickly address the issue of tax collection in Lagos State. Obviously, there is a need to increase internally generated revenues, raise incomes, but then there are members of the public who actually claim that small and medium-sized enterprises are actually being squeezed on account of multiple taxes. What is it that you, as governor, will do in the very near term about the issue of taxation in a manner that those who do pay their taxes can actually see the benefits of what it is they're paying their taxes for. This is a complex issue, no doubt, but it is of grave concern to millions of voters here in Lagos State. I'm going to start with Mr. Gbadamosi first, and then we'll work our way again down to your right.
The reason why Lagosians have been squeezed left and right, why we're running a squeeze economy rather than an economy, is because of waste in public sector spending. I'll give you a quick example. The light rail project that my colleague referred to earlier from Okoko to CMS, okay, is being built at a cost of over $1 billion. Okay? However, in Ethiopia, there is a heavy rail project being built. Well, it has been built already. It started in 2011, completed in 2016. It's already in use. Okay? It was built at the cost of $5.2 million per kilometer. However, in Lagos, we apparently spent $54 million per kilometer on that light rail project that has been on for the last 10 years and not completed. Now, with those sort of situations, those sort of white elephant projects that involve a lot of waste, of course taxpayers will be squeezed. Of course there will be multiple taxation. And so we're going to bring in prudence into public sector spending. We're going to end the waste, cut the fat, and we're going to invest in infrastructure as quickly as possible, because where you don't invest, you can't expect to reap. Look, where we are now is the Lekki corridor. We're on the coastal road corridor, and there is no coastal road. Yes, they talk about it, but a coastal road, functional one, does not exist. If it did, we would be getting more taxes from all the businesses that will be along the coastal road. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Like you did mention, I'm sure there are a whole lot of fact check that we're doing. But regarding tax, the issue is really not so much about double taxation. It's people not being on the tax net. This is a population that's over 20 million. How many people do we have on the tax net? Less than 800,000 people. And we're meant to have, from the demography, we're meant to have about 16 million people on the tax net. So the efficient way to look at it is, how can we wrap up, double that figure year-on-year basis and get a whole lot more people being on the tax net. When we do that, issues around overburden will be reduced significantly. But I understand that which one will need to come first. You cannot eat an omelette without breaking the egg. People want to see service before they come forward to really want to pay. So government needs to be very creative and look for ways in which they will very well push development to new areas, such that it can now encourage new people that are not on the net to come forward voluntarily and be on the net. And how we're going to do that is ensuring that we set up PPPs with the private sector. Ensure that all of your PPP projects, right, are infrastructure driven. There are things that can bring about development in different sectors. And we've done it before. As MD of LSDPC, I've got over 14 PPPs that do not have one kobo from government financing. And those are the ways we can do it to ensure that people come back to the tax net.
Well, you said the MSMEs are the ones being squeezed. I think everybody's being squeezed. Corporate Lagos is being squeezed. Even we are being squeezed as individuals. We pay what? Radio and TV license, borehole tax, this tax, and that tax. So it's what you have is a situation where less than 50% of those supposed to be paying tax are paying tax. And what the state government has done is to try and make sure that those that have been captured are paying for those that have not been captured. And that is why there's a heavy burden. And the way forward is that we must grow our economy in a way that we diversify it and put more people in the tax net. The health insurance that was just launched is a very good example. For me, like I said, I'm an advocate of the health insurance. But the health insurance that is being proposed says that it's going to be mandatory. In other words, it's an additional tax. We must pay whether we want or not. It would have been better if the health insurance scheme was running well. And then people will come out from their closets and say, we want to be part of this scheme. Then you capture them. So it's the kind of amenities that you provide that you use to bring people to come into the tax net because they see value for money. And that is the way we should go. I still got some 9 seconds. So it's important that we look at tax. Our regulatory bodies today are used to tax people rather than to regulate. The priority is to tax. It shouldn't be so.
Thank you. I don't believe tax collection should be done to stifle businesses. I happen to be an attorney in New York and also a chartered accountant. I'm a chartered accountant here, I'm barrister and solicitor in this country. And I happen to be a chartered banker. I know what it is in collecting taxes. We are going to introduce elastic system, elastic collection. Elastic collection is a system that's not going to stifle businesses. And people who are coming up with these rules of stifling businesses with taxes is because they are putting their personal interest over public interest. You see, at the end of the day, many people will not be able to pay for that, then they are going to go through the back door. That's what's going on. It's like, going through the back door, pay their way through, at the same time they get the services they want. They know what they're doing, and it still boils down to the issue of commonwealth in the hand of an individual, not giving it to the people. And also imposition. Believe me, thank you.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you very much. It is estimated that approximately 3,800 people a day arrive or migrate into Lagos. That's approximately 1.42 million people a year. To put that in perspective, an analogy I can use is if we could just imagine 10 Boeing 747 planes arriving in Lagos every single day, loaded to the brim, 300 plus passengers per plane every single day, landing but never leaving. According to the United Nations and a 2017 World Bank report, an estimated 2 out of 3 people living in Lagos live in slums. If you were to become governor of Lagos State in the next 50 years, how seriously would you tackle this problem? And what remedies would you put in place to ensure that the numbers of slums reduce in the state and that the infrastructure required and needed by millions of this state's citizens are met, not in the future, but in their lifetime? I'm going to start at this point with Mr. Sanwo-Olu first.
Well, thank you very much. I think the solution is in two-pronged. First is to look at how can we ensure that the right residents of Lagos State get the service. And how you need to do that is to come with some form of identity, and how can we very quickly, come up with an identity system that ensure that we can plan ahead. We can plan on our health, we can plan on our education, we can plan on the road usage, That has to be done in some sort. The next level is to look at how do we do regeneration. How to do regeneration is by ensuring, and part of the things we talk about, quickly have an aggressive land reform exercise. If I give title to the residents of Badia today, 100 square meters, if I give title to it, immediately there's a 25 to a 30% return on that investment, just by that little sheet of paper. And what that means is that you can create that to an investment, and leverage that investment to ensure that development comes there. And it's also to look at, how can we scale up development and regenerate? How do I mean scaling up? Take a little parcel of it, try and regenerate it, and becomes a model that you can use for others. Because they're not going to allow or trust government to wear up a whole place. There are lots of human, civil society and human capital issues that will not allow you. So make sure that you have a model where you can do it in silos, you can do it in stage by stage with the cooperation of the residents.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sanwo-Olu. I'm going to go to Mr. Jimmy Agbaje next. Could we have some volume on Mr. Agbaje's microphone, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, these are challenges of a mega city, and the way forward is to understand what government can do and what it needs to on its own and what it needs to do with the private sector. Government's resources are not unlimited. Education and health fully under the ambit of government, and government must address that. But when people are coming in at that rate, you have a problem of waste. Government cannot handle waste the way it is presently being done. So you must bring the private sector into it, and that's using the PSPs and looking at waste as not so much as a problem, but as a resource. We cannot just continue to think that waste is about throwing it in the landfill. You know, we generate 12 to 14,000 metric tons of waste every day. That's like 400 trailer loads every day. There's no land that is going to keep, landfill that's going to keep that. So you've got to address it from a different perspective, as we have been doing. Detour for transportation. We talked about the light rail. Government cannot build the light rail. It must work with the private sector, because when you do borrow money, you will not have 10 years still trying to build a light rail. But when the private sector is doing it, it's more efficient and it will happen, because the numbers are multiplying and government does not have the resources to do that. So it's important that we get that. It's important we look at power. It's important that our economy is growing at a rate that can absorb the cost of delivering services. That's the way forward.
Mr. Salas, over to you, sir.
The first thing I want to do, I think I did mention something about it, is the issue of grassroots governance. I want to practice grassroots governance system in Lagos State.
Could you speak into your microphone, please?
I want to practice grassroots governance system in Lagos State. If I get in, I want to set up World Executive Council. I want to put in stakeholders and special assistants to the governor. And I want to appoint leadership among them, release their common wealth to them, and then teach them how to fix the neighborhood, how to generate wealth among the people. We have the tools. I personally have the tools depository. I have a tools depository with me. We are going to tool them up, teach them a lot of things, how to make the neighborhood fine, and we are going to remove all the violent brigades in Lagos State. And on the issue of so many aircrafts landing, I think I heard you say that. I happen to have traveled to more than half of the countries in this world. I think Nigeria, Lagos is still not getting enough. So we need to open Lagos to the world. Lagos is the image of African nations, African black people. It should not be governed the way we're governing it. So I am over that to open this Lagos to the greater world. And a lot of people want to know what's going on in Lagos. I am saying it for the record. I've traveled to more than half of the countries in this world.
And finally, to Mr. Gbadamosi.
Very quickly, Lagos only appears crowded because it's underserved in terms of infrastructure. Singapore is actually more crowded than Lagos, with 7,500 people per square kilometer. Lagos has just under 4,900 people per square kilometer. So we are less crowded, we're just underserved. The extremities of Lagos, to the west and to the east, have very little in terms of road infrastructure. Thanks to the current governor for doing what he did in the Ekpe corridor. He did well, but we need more. And that's what I'm going to be concentrating my efforts on. Aside from the Lagos Integrated Regeneration Plan, in which we'll be pouring all the money from Alpha Beta. All of the money that's going to Alpha Beta at the moment will go off budget into the Lagos Integrated Regeneration Plan, taking care of Ikorodu, Ikeja, Apapa, Oshodi, Solo, Mushin, and Ibejuleki as industrialized local governments. And then Badagry, Etiosa, and again Ibejuleki for tourism. We're going to open up these local governments with more infrastructure, okay, roads, bridges, drains. We're going to link the over 25 islands in Lagos by bridge using the shortest distance policy. Across Lagos, we're going to invest. And once we do this, and we add that to the 40,000 affordable housing units we're going to be building over the period of 4 years, I think the congestion problem will be solved. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, can we begin to ask for our 1 minute rebuttal? Because it's important for us to know that
the answer is yes.
Yes.
You may.
Thank you.
1 minute, Mr. Sanwo-Olu.
Thank you very much. It's important for us to know this is serious business. You ask a question, and it's important for people to answer your questions, right? And I think it's critical for our viewers to know that what we're doing here, right, it's so important to the 20 million so Lagosians looking at us. It's not just for us to rhetoric and say things, it's to be sure that questions that are asked, are properly answered, right? And if you don't have the answers, you really can say you pass on to it. It's not just to name drop, and to look good, but it's for us to know that this is serious business and answers must be provided to questions that are being answered. Thank you very much.
I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to jump in here and go off script right now. As millions of viewers around Nigeria, in Lagos State and around the world, and in this hall today listened to you as candidates, one thing that we do recognize is that there's no shortage of ideas and vision. That is very clear. But I'm going to ask you this question, and I want you to take just 60 seconds to respond. And I'm going to start with Mr. Salis on my left, and we'll work our way this way. But this is a very important question. We've got great ideas on this podium. We've got great visionaries in Nigeria. We go through election cycles every 4 years. We've been talking about these problems perennially for 40, for 50 years, but many of them are still staring us in the face. Why is this the case? And what will you do differently to ensure that the status quo does not remain? Mr. Salis, I'll start with you first.
Thank you. It's about who is in charge, whoever is elected. And I said it, the loyalty issue, if you are elected into government, you must have fear of God, and you must have passion, passionate for the less privileged, because the government exists to take care of those who don't have. That's why they tax the rich to support the poor. We are having this problem because certain people, when they get elected, it gets into their head. They don't have fear of God anymore. They don't have passion for the people. So now they take the personal interest, their personal interest, to override public interest. If you have somebody on board that has fear of God and passion for the people, then it's going to work. Everything will work, and that's the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salis. My question was, why do you think this is the case, and what would you do differently? Mr. Agbaje.
Well, someone said it's easier to run for office than to run the office. But I think the real issue in our part of the world, I keep saying that we have two kinds of politicians. We have those politicians generally seek power, and we have those that seek power for self, and we have those that seek power for service. And I think what we have in our part of the world and in this country and in Lagos is that those who are in power have taken power more for self than for service. And so you find that that drives a process that is about us, not about everybody. And I think that's the real issue, that when you know it's about service to the people, then it's a different approach to governance. That is not happening. More and more people who are coming into politics are coming into politics for themselves rather than service to the people.
Mr. Sanwo-Olu.
Thank you. It is aggressive reform of Nigeria. We need to truly have a federating state. How do you explain a federal government or people sitting in Abuja? For 7 years, they will not give you an approval for a right-of-way that is within your jurisdiction. How would somebody legislate over a primary school that is 800 kilometers from where they sit? How would someone that do not know anything about a local community in Alimosho comes from other part of the country as the police commissioner? Those are the issues we need to truly, really...
And what is the solution? What will you do?
We need to devolve power from the center. We need to look straight into our face as a country and say we want to truly, really reform this country. It's when we do that and let true federalism work. True federalism truly, really, it's about ensuring that who has the greatest number is for the greatest good. That's the only way we can reform and ensure that those concerns you have over the last 50 years are resolved.
Our problem in Nigeria is that we talk too much and do too little. That's our problem. And that has been our problem in Lagos for the last 20 years. We talk too much, we do too little. We talk a good fight, but when it comes to time to fight the fight, we run away. And that time has got to come to an end now. I'm a doer. That's what I do. I do. I don't just talk. Everything I'm coming to do in government I've already done. I'm not coming to learn, I'm not coming to form committees. I'm coming to give power to Lagosians, practically speaking. I want to build new power networks, devolve the networks away from Ikeja distribution and Eko distribution after acquiring a good corporate footprint for Lagos State in the power sector as deregulated. We're going to rebuild all those 8 local governments I mentioned earlier, and that is how we're going to do it after sorting out the civil servants who would ordinarily have been the bottlenecks to our growth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your forthright responses. I'm now going to turn it over to the panel, in particular, Mr. Israel Aye, who will be posing a question on ICT as that relates to Lagos State, and Yemi Adamalekun, who will be asking a question on governance. Over to the panel.
All right, gentlemen. Okay, I'm sure you can hear me. So as a prelude to the question I have here, I just want to say this. According to the World Population Review, the population of Lagos is expected to double by about 2050, making it the 3rd largest city in the world. Now, potentially that will compound the challenge of youth employment or unemployment, depending on how you see it. Now, cities like London, Tel Aviv, Singapore, New York, Kigali, Rwanda, are among numerous cities in the world that are taking proactive steps, including providing funding, office parks, and other incentives to attract tech startup founders and software engineers to their cities because of the number of jobs that ecosystem creates. So my question to you, and I believe it starts from Mr. Badamasi, is what will you do as governor to attract, and it's very specific, investment, talent, and generally support the burgeoning tech startup in Lagos? Thank you very much.
You cannot have tech without the infrastructure. You cannot have a tech ecosystem without a high-speed internet network. And we don't have that in Lagos right now. I myself am a tech entrepreneur of many years' experience. I left the technology world in 2007 when I sold up and moved shop over to Lagos. I ran an IT training, certification, and consultancy service at 20 to 22 Deptford High Street back then for about 10 years. All right, so I know exactly what we need. And what we need is to take advantage of the 3 transatlantic cables that land here in Lekki, but are not being allowed to be deployed on a wired telephone network throughout Lagos, meaning we're losing out on server farm jobs, we're losing out on call center jobs, we're losing out on data center jobs, okay? And we need to deploy this very quickly. The only bottleneck to that is something called LASIMRA, the Lagos State Infrastructure Management and Regulation Agency, that seeks to charge telcos 3,000 naira per linear meter as far back as 2011 to lay their cables. That's going to end. The Lagos Integrated Regeneration Plan is going to include trunking in all our civil works for the landline telephone people so that we can deploy these things. And in addition to that, we'll be funding technology parks and providing funding for startups, not loans, grants, because we need the jobs to grow our IGR. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm the only one that has visited all of these startup companies we have around. I've been to Vibranium, I've been to Workstation, I've been to the Vibranium, I've been to the Workstation, I've been to Flexo. I've liaised and worked with all of them. I see the passion these young Nigerians bring to the table. What we're going to do, which is the things we promised them, is that we're going to build technology hubs in all of our local governments. We're going to ensure that we create an environment where all of the innovative ideas they have, right, will come to fruition very, very quickly. We started conversations with all the telcos, and I've said to them that if the issues are right of way, right, it's because we realized that they were destroying some of the underground cables that are there. We've agreed with them that we're going to defer whatever payment comes on board, right? We don't need to burden them today, right? And so all of them know it, that I've had discussions with each and every one of them, that right of way will not be an issue with you. Once we have that, right, as we speak, even on the campaign trail, I've deployed free Wi-Fi in 18 locations in Lagos, including all the higher institutions in Lagos as we speak, and they are working their life. It goes to show that I'm not just speaking it, I've started actioning it, I've started doing it, and we've started working together with all the 540 tech startups in Lagos already. We've drawn together a blueprint and said to them, each local government, we get the support that is required.
Thank you, Mr. Sanwo-Olu. Mr. Agbaje?
Well, it was not for nothing that I said technology was going to be the major thing I would do with regards to our schools. The problem we have today, and we must realize that it's not about giving free Wi-Fi. It's not about that. Wi-Fi has become a tool that must be available for our youth, must be available for our children. We talk about coding. You need internet connection to have coding done. Every school, from primary school, must have internet connection. Today, those that are in power have not allowed, they've put bottlenecks in having internet connectivity. It's a rule of thumb that when you have 10% increase in broadband, your GDP rises by 1.38%. That is huge. So if we allow broadband everywhere and allow our children to look at internet connectivity as a way of life, the whole story will change. There is a country in Africa, Madagascar today, has now taken the position of having the fastest internet service, and so outsourcing that we were losing out on to China and all the other countries, Madagascar is now the port for everybody because it has the fastest internet connection. It has power. We need to get that in place. And when we do get that in place, then we'll be where we need to be.
Thank you, Mr. Agbaje. And last but not the least, Mr.
Thank you. I think I've assessed a lot of our youths. There's nothing wrong with Nigerians when it comes to theoretical education. What we need is investment in practical education. So this very question, we need to work with the federal government on the issue of attracting, investments, particularly technological investment, and of course, getting into practical education. I happen to be an attorney, and I want to tell you, excuse me, I want to tell you about the U.S. visa called H-2B. H-2B is what is used to attract all these important brains into the United States. Now, I think
Can you speak to your microphone?
H-2B.
Speak into your microphone, please.
Yes, okay, thank you. H-2B. Now, in Nigeria, I think Nigeria needs to declare Nigeria as a whole visa-free for certain GDP countries, particularly those countries that have...
The question relates to ICT.
Yes, ICT. Where they do that, more technical people will come and do an assessment. They'll come in, they will travel into Nigeria, particularly Lagos. We open it up into the world because there are so many people who don't understand Lagos, they don't understand Nigeria. So that is very, very important because it's about people coming in and, of course, do their assessment and be able to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Salas. Greatly appreciated. Over to Yemi Adamulekun for the last question from the panel.
Thank you. I have individual questions for the candidates based on statements they have made. So to Mr. Salas, Lagos State Residents Registration Agency was enacted as law in June 2011 to build a reliable database of Lagosians for proper planning of social services. It has been used to access services like the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund and the recently launched health insurance scheme. It is estimated that Lagos gets over 1 million new residents annually. So how do you plan to use this database to plan and be accountable to Lagosians, especially the poor, who are your primary concern?
Yeah, thank you. I've already answered the question in the past, but I'm going to repeat it right here. The first thing I want to do is set up grassroots executive council in every state. That's World Executive Council. Appoint stakeholders in there who are going to serve as special assistants to the governor. Then we're going to be looking at the problems. These are the people that have a graph. They have a graph. That's what we call circle of relationship. The longer the circle is, you begin to lose relevance. But there are people who have control. They know who is who's this, within a ward level. So if you have Ward Executive Council, we appoint leaders, take their common words to them, teach them some of these practical issues, things will go well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Agbaje, if elected, you will be serving as the governor of Lagos State at the pleasure of Lagosians. You will be their employee. You have said, and I paraphrase, the leadership of Lagos State, the 5th largest economy in Africa, must have the appropriate checks and balances to ensure the prosperity of all its people. What systems and processes would you put in place to ensure that your government is mindful of this dynamic, that Lagosians have access, have a say in governance, and you are accountable to all, regardless of socioeconomic class?
Simple. FOI, Freedom of Information Bill. We must domesticate the Freedom of Information Bill. We are still running our Lagos State government in a very opaque manner, definitely not open. We have no access to know how contracts are given out, to how much they're giving for, to whom they're giving. We have fund collection of fund strategy companies that are collecting a percentage of all our revenue. We don't even know how much it is. So you cannot be accountable if you do not run an open system. I'm saying that my first goal in the first 100 days is to ensure that the Freedom of Information Bill is domesticated. In that way, Lagosians can ask any question of government and get an answer as of right. It is not so today, and that is the way to go about accountability. I come from a background of struggle. Like I said, I have been in different struggles in pro-democracy and all, so I am about accountability. It is key. I sell my name, I sell my integrity. I will not allow anybody to bring it down.
Thank you. The next question from Mr. Sanwo-Olu that was prepared is a direct, in a sense, follow-up from Mr. Agbaje's response. Since the Freedom of Information Act became law in 2011, your party has used taxpayers' money to prevent Lagosians from using the law to access information about the finances of Lagos State, like a detailed breakdown of the budget. What is your position on access to information by Lagosians? Would you comply with the provisions for proactive disclosure?
Well, thank you very much. It's just to make the note that I think Lagos State is only one of the states that publishes its budget on a year-on-year basis. In fact, when I was in government, we do a quarterly budget review in which we become answerable, we become accountable, and we see all of the numbers that comes out from our budget to estimate on a quarterly basis. Beyond that, in my government, is to set up a citizens engagement portal where a two-way channel will be communicated, where all issues of concern, every single issue of concern will be popped out, and we can escalate it to the governor's office, and direct responses will come, we'll get responses that will come directly to them. Regarding the FOI, I imagine it's something that is critical enough, and we'll be looking at it. If we need to cross the T and dot the I and bring it out, we will do that ASAP. But beyond that, like I said, is to have, a citizens portal that citizens will be able to engage. A document is FOI, but when they have a portal in which they can engage, they can ask specific questions, and will get specific responses to all the questions they have. They can post specific issues that is of concern to them, and we'll deal with it on a case-by-case basis. That's what we're going to do, and that's what I'm about. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last question to Mr. Badamasi. You have talked about the challenges of public procurement in Lagos. Opacity in procurement processes is responsible for a significant percentage of corruption in government expenditure and poor service delivery, as evidenced by poor quality, high cost, and insufficient services. Lagos State procurement records are not made public. They were published for a period, and that stopped. The public disclosure was stopped, sorry. What is your plan to make procurement in Lagos State open and inclusive?
Thank you very much. What we're going to do, first of all, is cease and desist all action on the Freedom of Information Act. The court has actually pronounced that there is no need for domestication and that the law applies in Lagos. But the Lagos State government of the APC has been contesting that in court. They've appealed the judgment, and that's the reason why we have this situation that we have. So we're going to cease and desist and just comply. Okay? In addition to that, we're going to pass a law, because the FOI does not actually cover financial information. I don't know if you know that. The Freedom of Information Act does not cover financial information. It actually excludes it expressly. So we're going to pass a law in Lagos mandating that all public expenditure must be made public, because it's not our money. It's your money. You worked for it. It's not my father's money. Okay? It's not an inheritance. It's yours. You sweated for it. So you deserve the right to know exactly how we're going to be spending it. So every budget will be published online, and people will be able to access exactly how it's been spent. I'm aware that the budget website has been down for a few years. I remember asking the current commissioner for finance about it, and about the cost of the Ajah flyover, and he said it's on the budget website. And I said, which URL? Because the URL we know is down. Now we're going to publish every kobo that we spend and make sure that everybody has access to it, either online or in print on newspapers across the state. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We are going to take a 60-second commercial break, and when we come back, our candidates will be speaking about their vision for the future of Lagos State. Not just their leadership over 4 years, but the future. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Lagos State gubernatorial election debate, brought to you by the Platform Nigeria. We'll take into the final round of questions during this, what has turned out to be a very interesting debate over the last hour and a half. And to round up our last two sets of questions, what we have done is select from a list of questions that have been provided by members of the public. We received a total of 296 questions in all, and we've tried to synthesize those and summarize them, particularly with regards to recurring questions that have come up with regards to each of you as candidates. So these are questions that have come from the public domain. The first question goes to Mr. Jimmy Agbaje of the People's Democratic Party, PDP. Some members of the public have described you as an election politician, and you only seem to surface during the election cycle and are hardly ever seen again. What about your campaign this time around is different, and what chances do you believe you have of succeeding?
Well, in the first place, it is not correct that I go to bed, as some have said. I ran for office in 2007. I do not run for office except I believe I have something to offer. I did not run in 2011. I ran in 2015. And even after 2015, I have been very much out there. In fact, when we're talking about the platform, I was still on the platform, I believe a year or two ago. You could accuse me of not being, of being publicity shy. But I have done a lot of work in terms of motivation for our younger ones. I have also been very active in politics. For those who do not know, I even ran to be national chairman of my party in 2016. So did I in 2017. So it is not correct that I go to bed. I think some people would like to play that card. As to what was the other question? As to what I would do?
What do you consider to be your chances of success?
Oh, success.
This time around?
Oh, very successful. Let me put it like this. I keep saying that we ran a very good race in 2015. We believe that that base remains quite intact. And I can assure you that we have added on since 2015. We have every belief that we can win. And we will win these elections. Our fear is that the agencies responsible for election will allow that to happen.
Mr. Jimmy Agbaje, thank you very much. Our next question is to Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu of APC. Again, a question synthesized from public comments. As a governorship candidate, your name seems to have literally come out of nowhere. Other than your endorsement by a very influential member of your party, millions of Lagosians seem to have never heard of you before now. Neither did they seem to be aware of your accomplishments in politics, business, or finance. How do you intend to step out of the shadows without stepping on toes? And how can you convince the voters of Lagos State that you have what it takes to lead Lagos over the next 4 years to the next level?
Thank you very much. Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu has been in government since 2002. I left my bank as a general manager in 2002 as head of investment banking, and I was opportune to be the special advisor on corporate matters. That was the first time any government will have any engagement with the private sector. I was a 3-time commissioner, commissioner for commerce and commissioner for economic planning and budget, commissioner for commerce and industry, commissioner for establishment, training, and pension. I was the first person that set up what we see today as the Lekki Free Trade Zone. I was the first person that set up the Security Trust Fund. I was the first person that set up the first pension board in this country. I was the first person that brought the BRT to the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I was the first person that set up the 767-112 Control and Command Center. I left on, I moved back to the private sector as a consultant in privatization. I came back to government as the managing director of the foremost property company, LSDPC. I set up 14 PPPs for LSDPC. For 2 years, I did not take a kobo from the treasury of government. I created businesses that have never been seen in that organization before. And I'm not lying, of not only the Lagos Business School, the London Business School, and the Kennedy School of Government. These are some of the very first I bring to the table.
Can I have a rebuttal on that? Can I have a rebuttal on that?
Mr. Sanwo-Olu, you took advantage of a rebuttal opportunity earlier. I see Mr. Agbaje raising his hands there.
Yes.
Is that a rebuttal, or a comment, or an addition to your previous comments?
No, not an addition. I think it's to ask. I believe the questions to look at Lagosians and say, I am going to be in charge. That the buck is going to stop on his table. And I think that's the question.
All right, Mr. Sanwo-Olu, over to you.
Mr. Sanwo-Olu had a unique opportunity of running the state budget.
In other words, are you going to be your own person?
I am my own person. I'm 53 years old. I've got 4 children, 2 of them out of university at master's degree level. My wife is a medical doctor. I am the person that I am that is standing in front of the whole 20 million Lagosians. I am my person. I have started so many first in the state government, and it's not by anybody. It is by the will of God and the skills that I've acquired.
Thank you very much. I am going to go next to Mr. Wolabi Salis of the Alliance for Democracy, AD party. And my question to you is as follows. Again, synthesized from public comments. According to news reports, you contested the Lagos governorship candidacy in 2003, 2007, and 2011. Given the complexities of governance, especially of a state such as Lagos, why do you think you're qualified to govern Lagos? And what is your chance of success? Why is it that millions of voters in Lagos State will vote for you?
Okay. I am in this contest to address the problem of the less privileged in Lagos State. And we are the majority. A lot of people in this state are going through a lot because of the way the resources, I've said it before and I'm going to repeat, because of the way the resources of this state is being managed. It's actually in the hands of an individual. Many people are sycophantic about it. They don't want to come out and talk. So I've gone to so many stakeholders, the churches, the mosques, the alphas, and so many people to tell them they have to come out and speak for the people. And we are doing our grassroots, work. Our chances are very high to win this contest. We are out there, on grassroots, door to door, and we have a lot of people who are following us on this contest. Because this contest, we termed it, is the contest of the people versus the individual. That is number one of the objective. And of course, we are going to remove the violent brigades, like I just said, that has been created throughout Lagos State, so that there will be peace, and so that peace can reign in this state. And I'm going to get it done by setting up grassroots executive council in all through the wards of Lagos State. We have the chance of winning. Our limitation is rigging and vote by. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Salas. And finally to Mr. Gbadamosi of the ADP. Again, until recently, your name or accomplishments have been relatively unknown. You've talked about some of your experience, but I'd like to talk about skill sets and competencies. Which ones do you think stand out that should convince Lagosians that you are the right candidate to hold the #1 spot in the state?
At this point, it really is just about the needs of Lagosians. What do Lagosians need? Lagosians need light, power. Lagosians need better roads so that they can spend less time in traffic. Lagosians need better drainage so they don't get flooded out of their houses every rainy season, year on year, for the last 50 years. Lagosians need jobs. In all of these areas, I am supremely qualified. As the developer of Amen Estate, I've built, as I speak to you, over 300 homes off of my own bat without borrowing, without being ever a government contractor at any level, without ever receiving any government subsidies, waivers, or any assistance of any type. I have provided power 24/7 for the last 8 years to those 300 families that have trusted me with their funds. I have provided water, I have provided good roads, and I have provided drainage. In addition to that, I do come from a very distinguished family, the Gbadamosi family of Ikorodu. My grandfather built the original Ikorodu Road between 1947 and 1953. And we have a number of firsts in my family as well. So I have a name to protect. I have a good name to protect. My uncle Rashid Gbadamosi was the first to start bottling water in Nigeria, Ragolis, many people know that. My aunt was the first Nigerian woman to become a master's degree holder, former commissioner for the former Attorney General of Lagos State, Mrs. Wanu Folami, and there are so many other reasons, but I'll stop here for now.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Mr. Sanyolu, we have run out of time. We have run out of time, but I want to do this. I want to do this. Each one of you has 30 seconds. 30 seconds, not 1 minute. It is a yes or a no response. Here during this debate, numerous promises have been made, and there are absolutely more that are going to be made over the next few days. Will you go on the record at this event today and commit to Lagosians that you will not seek re-election for a second term if you fail to keep the promises that you have made today during your first term? And I'm going to start with Mr. Salis first, and I'll work my way down. But 30 seconds is all the time we have. I do apologize for that. Mr. Salas.
My promise is to improve the well-being of the people of Lagos State. And if I fail to do it, I will not, I repeat, I will not seek re-election for second time. Thank you.
Mr. Agbaje.
If I am not able to improve the quality of lives of Lagosians, as stated in terms of rankings and all, then I will not seek re-election.
Mr. Sanwo-Olu.
I clearly know that what is on the ballot is a 4-year tenure, and I'm not going to say that I'm interested in an 8-year. If all of the promises are put here today, I do not fulfill them for one reason or the other, I don't think I would deserve to come back again. Thank you.
Mr. Baramosi.
As someone who is in the prosperity business and whose promise is to deliver prosperity to all Lagosians regardless of religion, ethnicity, or creed, my promise is to ensure that everything I've promised, because I have no godfather, I will deliver. If I do not, please feel free to kick my butt out of State House. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say a very big thank you to each of our candidates. One of the things that is absolutely certain is that we do have on this platform a group of very credible candidates, and I do hope that if given the opportunity, you will do Lagos proud. Once again, well done and congratulations in advance. Ladies and gentlemen, please give your candidates a warm round of applause. We're not done yet. I just want to say, we'll have opportunities to shake hands in a moment. Gentlemen, just hold on a second. I'd also like to say a very big thank you to the Platform Nigeria, hosts of this Lagos governorship election debate, to the panel of subject experts, Channels Television, who have carried this event live, and to you, our very wonderful audience, and to each of you, our candidates.